Hello, everyone. Welcome to a surprise episode of The Window, your international football podcast. Brandon's here, I'm here, and the AFCON draw took place earlier this week. We are super pumped for AFCON. It's going to happen later this year. It's actually going to happen over the Christmas holiday, which is kind of fun, and over the New Year as well. So the holiday season will be extra festive this year. Um, Brandon, how are things?
Good, good. It's somewhat surprising that we're actually able to hold this podcast talking about the AFCON draw, given how long it took them to actually pull the balls out of the pots during the draw. I think we were
Yeah.
past, I don't know, the hour and a half mark until they finally started to get things underway.
Yes, absolutely. And for a while there was no sign of stopping. Like, I mean, it's four
Festive
days
dancing, they
later.
just kept bringing more people out and more people out, and
Yeah, yeah,
a never-ending parade of celebrities and performers, and it
yes,
was quite a spectacle.
yes. It really was. And you can always count on Africa to be a spectacle. So that's not too surprising. In fact, I was super pumped when oh, I cannot remember his name. Oh, Jimon Hunsu. I don't know if that's how you say
Oh
it right,
yeah, Jimon
but
Hansu from
yeah,
Amistad
Hansu.
fame.
Yes, from Gladiator. Dude, when he walked on the stage, I was like, I was in my office and I was going like this. I was clapping because I was like, yes, let's go. Like this is AFCON, baby.
Oh yeah, yeah. That was I was super pumped when they announced him as well.
Yeah, it was cool. Yeah, so we're gonna talk a little bit of AFCON. We're gonna do like a super crazy early prediction of
Rapid
who's
reaction.
rapid reaction of who's coming out of these groups. So yeah, we're just gonna quickly go through all the groups, and hopefully this will help tide everybody over until we get to closer to the March window, which Brendan and I were just talking before this is going to be a huge one. So we're super pumped about that, and we will
We're
obviously.
only about 6 weeks away from it too.
I know it's coming up quick. So yeah, we will have a show for you guys ahead of that as well as we usually do. But for now, hopefully this will tide you over. So with that said, let's roll into Group A, which contains the host Morocco, obviously. But they were drawn with Mali, Zambia, and Comoros. So go ahead, hit us off, Brandon. Tell us how
I think
you're.
it's a tricky group. Um, Mali, Zambia, and Comoros, all three teams that they've been on the precipice of that next level of Africa team. Comoros maybe a little bit below, but Mali is a team that has been very tough and is close to breaking through and potentially could qualify for the World Cup. Zambia and Comoros as well, very tough teams, a lot of talent on both teams. Neither of them are teams that you were really all that shocked to see qualify, honestly. Um, there are four good teams in this group. I don't know if we're going to see necessarily a repeat of AFCON 23, where the host is potentially at risk of not even getting out of the group. I think this Morocco team should win the group pretty easily, frankly.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, but the other three teams in this group are all very tough, and all of them certainly can get out of this group.
Yeah, I agree. I think this is one of the groups where we'll see three teams come out of it, if I'm being honest with you.
Yeah.
And yeah, the Morocco as the host definitely will get out of this group. But between Mali, Zambia, and Comoros, it may surprise some people, but I'm actually going with Mali and Comoros in as the
Okay.
other two groups. And the reason for that is because as much as I love Zambia, I just think defensively, there's still a lot of question marks there. I feel like Comoros is a more well-rounded team. And so for me, even though Zambia is like all gas, no brake, I think the no brake part is gonna ultimately screw them over. So yeah, this will be a really interesting group to see who comes out of here.
Yeah. I'm the only thing I would say that maybe I disagree with, other than the picks, but that's separate. But I do worry a little bit that this group might only get two teams out. And the reason I say that is I do feel like Mali and Zambia and Comoros, and more so Zambia and Comoros, I think they're very competitive. And I think that's one of the challenges when you have a group that is so strong top to bottom. Do you see a number of draws where these teams are battling it out and just nobody can get a win? And if Zambia gets a draw against Comoros and Mali, and Comoros gets a draw, and you know, they, there are going to be other groups where typically you need 3 or 4 points to qualify as that third best team. Um, but if Zambia and Comoros draw, and you see a few in this group, while the teams are good from a quality perspective, I do worry a little bit that they're too close in quality, and it
Mhm.
could cost this group a third team.
So who's your pick then? If you've got Morocco, who else is coming out for you?
Uh, I'm actually going to go with nobody out of this group. I do think that this is going to be one of those groups that uh, does not send a third team.
Yeah, but who's your second one?
Mali.
Mali. Okay.
I like Mali to finish second. I feel the same about Zambia and Comoros. I lean Zambia a little more than Comoros.
Hmm.
Um, but I think Comoros is so tough and so good that I think it's going to work to the detriment of this group as a whole.
It's tough to it's tough. We've got basically a year until it happens, right? And the lot can change
Yes.
in that time. So yeah,
Yeah.
but
And I
no,
think, you look at a team like Comoros, and I think this is just a bad draw for them.
yeah.
I look at where some of the other pot four teams ended up in some of these other groups. If they were in a group D, or maybe even an E or an F, maybe it would look a little bit different. Um, I just think they're good, just perhaps not better than the teams above them.
All right. We'll take it. Okay, so you got Morocco, Mali. I'm gonna
I
go with
do.
three still. Okay, cool. Uh, should we move to Group B?
Yeah, I want to ask just one quick question, and just an opinion question,
Yeah.
because I think we saw it a little bit at this last AFCON, in that, do you think teams are at, this is a purely hypothetical, well, a subjective response, I guess. Do you think the teams in Group A are somewhat at a disadvantage because they don't know what they need to get through as a third place team? Meaning they play first. They're
Yeah.
done. Whoever's in third place, just like the Ivory Coast was, they were written off. Everyone thought that they were going to be done. You can't do anything. Everybody else is playing after that. The results ended up going the way of the Ivory Coast, but when they finished their group, they were, I don't know, 15-20% to even get out of the group and progress. So ultimately things went their way. But do you think teams are at a disadvantage by playing before others?
I don't know. I don't know if I've ever formed an opinion on this, if I'm being honest. So I feel like you have an opinion.
I'm not sure. I'm
Okay.
not sure. It's just
We're
something I was thinking about as we're talking about Group A, and I'm thinking about, okay, the host was just sitting there for days wondering
yeah,
if they were going to get out of the group.
yeah. I don't
But
I don't I don't know. I mean, maybe an advantage in the fact that if they find out that they are going through, it gives them a huge boost. I don't
yeah,
know. You
yeah.
know, but I, I don't know. I mean, that's a really good question. Maybe we should put it to our listeners.
That's what I was thinking too.
If you feel one way or the other, please let us know. Tweet us. Let us
Yes.
know or drop us a comment.
Does it mean anything, or is it totally meaningless?
Yeah. Yeah. And I guess the other piece too that I just thought of that doesn't have anything to do with that, but it has to do with AFCON as a whole is, the Premier League has all of their festive fixtures through this exact time frame, right? And so it's like game, game,
Ooh,
game, right? It's like boom, boom, boom. And so that is going to be, I think, a storyline that could potentially, uh,
you think teams aren't going to release players?
well, I don't know. I'm hoping that they
Yeah,
do, and I'm hoping they respect the game, you know. Uh,
yeah.
but I just wonder, or if players will decide not to go to AFCON, right? We saw that with this last
Yeah,
one. Is there were a few players who said, no, I don't want to go. I want to stay with my club and try to fight for a spot, right?
yeah.
Um, so like I know for sure there was at least one from DR Congo, and there are probably
Yeah.
others. So
Well, fun. Now that we're on that tangent, funny story that I would like to interject. So at the last
yeah,
AFCON, so we have our podcast account. I'll plug it right now if you're listening at Window INTL Pod. Make sure you give that a follow. Where I'm tweeting out statistics at @we_global at We Global Football. During the last AFCON, AFCON 2023, I got a huge number of replies, reactions, follows from these huge like accounts that had hundreds and hundreds of thousands of followers. It was big people from the fantasy Premier League community. And they were turning it around and saying, I'm saying, oh, Egypt's got an 85% chance to reach the quarterfinals. They're taking that and turning around and saying there's an 85% chance Mo Salah won't be back for this game. And they're trying to use that and say, okay, these players will be available, these players won't be available for their fantasy Premier League teams. And it is an interesting storyline of who is actually going to go to AFCON and how that could impact their teams, because you look at this and you're right. You might see teams be more reluctant because more club games fall during this start to end of AFCON.
yeah, yeah. So I'm like quickly looking through the different nations, and I'm thinking to myself, okay, so it could be a factor for Egypt.
Yeah.
They've got Salah, but they also have oh
Marmoush
my,
now is at City.
yes, correct. And you've got I'm just like Nigeria would affect Nigeria for sure.
Yeah.
Senegal for sure. Ivory Coast for sure. So, anyways, it's kind of interesting to look at that. But, anyways, all right, let's move to Group B. So,
That was a good
uh,
tangent, though.
yeah, in Group B we have Egypt, South Africa, Angola, and Zimbabwe. Now, before we dive in here, when I initially saw the draw, my instant reaction was, okay, this is a group of death.
Yeah.
But as I've like looked at this over the last couple days, and I don't know if you feel the same way, but I'm looking at all these groups and I'm like, you know what? I don't know. I don't know if there is a group of death.
Hmm.
Like there are some really tough groups. Like Group A is really tough, you know? So I don't know. Do you think there's a group of death in here? Do you think Group B is a group of death?
Uh, Zimbabwe's better than people think.
Yeah.
They're a team we talked a lot about during qualifying, and I think they're a team that between both of us, I think we did not realize the level of quality that that team has. So
Yeah.
I think top to bottom, I do think that Group B is probably the toughest. I think Group F maybe rivals that. I don't think there is a group of death. I think, we're in good shape. One thing I will say, just speaking of tangents as well, it's related to the draw though, but there's been a lot of criticism, excuse me, and a lot for myself about the FIFA rankings. It's always been an issue, but I'm not a huge fan of their new system because I don't think teams move up and down quickly enough. I think that is a flaw because goal differential is not a component of the calculation. But I think the FIFA rankings have done a much better job since moving to the new system of keeping teams ordered in a reasonable manner. And what that typically means is that you don't have a team in pot four that belongs in pot two. You don't have a team in pot one that belongs really in pot three. And so, because the pots for this draw and for many other draws tend to be better balanced, which I will give FIFA credit for, I think they've achieved that. I think you don't see a group of death as much
Mm,
because pot four is typically not as strong. You don't have a team that's an outlier that stays in pot four that's like clearly they don't belong here. So
yeah.
I think we haven't seen as much with a lot of draws recently where there's been a group of death. And I don't think there is one here.
Yeah, I'm kind of leaning that way as well. Like I think there's some really tough groups. I think Group B is definitely one of them. Um, this is another group for me. And on Zimbabwe, by the way, we've mentioned this in previous pods, but we'll mention it here again. Like they've qualified for 3 out of the last 4 AFCONs.
Yeah.
Like, they are a regular in this competition. So you cannot, say that they have no history, right? Like they are a well-deserving team to be
Yep.
in this competition. So I'm I like Egypt, obviously. I think Egypt uh probably tops this group, but it's
Yeah.
it's still tough. And then I actually do also think that this is a group where we could see 3 teams coming out of
Yeah.
it. Uh
This one I agree with you.
so I went with South Africa and I went with Angola. So unfortunately for
I've got the same picks as well. I
okay.
do think we see 3 teams out of this group, and that's not to write Zimbabwe off, but just wanted to throw some numbers out there. So Egypt 93% to get out of the group. Angola, I've got it 76%. South Africa 74%, and Zimbabwe 33%. So, leaning towards those top 3, but Zimbabwe even at 33% in this tough of a group just immediately tells you they're not going to be a pushover.
Yeah,
They're a tough team that nobody's going to want to see.
absolutely.
I would not be surprised, and just looking, it's the second highest, second lowest. But if like Egypt tops this group with maybe 5 points or 7 points, I don't think anybody's getting 9 points out of this group.
Yeah.
Um, it's going to be a close one. But I agree. I've still got Egypt, South Africa, and Angola.
Yeah.
And given I'm wearing the Angola kit for people listening, um, they're a team I think can actually make some noise beyond just the group.
Yes. Yes, we are excited for Angola this year. It could be a very fascinating 2025 for them as a whole, and AFCON would be part of that.
Yes.
Um, I guess my last point on Group B and with Zimbabwe is, again, I don't want to. I think that they are a deserving opponent for sure. I look at their qualifying campaign and they struggled against Cameroon in qualifying, right? Um, so to me, that just adds a little bit as to why I don't think they'll be able
Yeah.
to get out of the group, you know. So
Yeah, I've got Angola as my number 11 team in Africa, and fully expecting them to get out of the group and
yeah,
could certainly make the quarterfinals. And we didn't really mention South Africa much. I think they're a dangerous team as well.
yep,
They've been really improving over the last couple years and had been on the outside looking in and been like falling down to more of that second tier African team, but they've been much tougher. They're looking great in World Cup qualifying. um, I think they've improved a lot, and I think um, they fell off for a number of years, and I think people have forgotten about them a little bit, and it feels like they're definitely on the up right now.
yeah, I would agree. I would agree. That's a good shout. Bafana Bafana.
Yes.
We love some Bafana Bafana.
Absolutely.
All right, moving to Group C. Nigeria was drawn with Tunisia, Uganda, and Tanzania. So for me, I think the biggest question mark in my head with this group is, will there be goals here? Um,
Yeah.
these are four extremely defensive minded and low scoring teams. Like Nigeria, you look at Nigeria and you actually would think that they would score a lot of goals. They actually really they don't score a ton of goals. Tunisia definitely does not score a ton of goals. They're the draw
Oh
kings.
boy.
And Uganda plays a very tight, very defensive style, and to be frank, Tanzania does as well.
Yes.
So I'm I'm just wondering where the goals are going to come from in this group. I think it's going to be super tight. I'm really looking forward to the Uganda versus Tanzania derby match in this group.
Yeah.
I think, that could be a really fun game. I'm hoping that it is. I only went with two teams out of this group, and my second team might surprise some of you. And it's very early, so take it with a grain of salt because things could change. But I went with Nigeria and I went with Uganda.
No Tunisia.
No Tunisia
Wow.
for the second time in a row.
Wow.
Yep.
Um, wow. That I think is surprising. And yeah, I don't know if we see three teams come out of this group. Um, again, just like the first group, I think you have a little bit of a different scenario here. Not that the teams are necessarily all on level footing, or I think the teams in Group A are more even. I just, to your point, I don't know that we see enough goals where you get a whole bunch of wins coming out of this group. And I think the third place team in this group probably finishes on 3 points. It might come from three draws. Like that is a legitimate possibility.
Yes. Yes.
But Nigeria is a team. I don't know. I'm looking at my rankings and they've just fallen and fallen and fallen. And I really don't know what's going on with Nigeria. I mean, they're down to number 85 in the world for me. They're, I don't know, 14th in Africa. I mean, is Nigeria really the 14th best team in Africa? I'm like, and I'm starting to think and look at these other teams and like, I don't know that they're in the top 10. I feel like I could name 10 teams in Africa right now that are playing better than Nigeria. And I still think they'll get out of the group. I'm expecting them to. I still think it's going to be Tunisia, Nigeria. I don't think there's going to be a whole lot of surprise in this group, but Tanzania is a team for me that I would just keep an eye on. I don't know, I don't know what it is about that team, but it seems like they're always in it, always causing, chaos. And they got
Yep.
out of the group at the last AFCON.
Yes.
And, they were
They
a
did.
team that, like, most people were saying they have
Nope.
one of the lowest chances or just about the lowest of
Yep.
any of the teams in the field. And I mean, we were just talking earlier about World Cup qualifying. They're at a great spot to get to the playoffs in World Cup qualifying. And they might not win the group, but they're in a great spot. And they're at AFCON again. And I don't know, they seem to hang around and be a team that a lot of people underestimate. Um, not one of these teams that has players playing everywhere. Heavily local team, obviously. Um, but I think Tanzania is a team that I would just keep an eye on.
They do have this way of, yeah, scraping results. Like they were not supposed to get out of that group with Guinea.
Not at all.
Like it's still baffling that they were
Yeah.
able to do that, you know?
Even be at AFCON.
Yeah, exactly. So, um, I guess for me, that's one of the reasons why, at least at this point in time, I'm leaning more towards like Uganda because
Yeah.
I feel like there's a little more mojo with Uganda at the moment.
I don't know what to
But you're
expect from Uganda. I feel like they're another just weird team. In my mind, I almost think it's of them in the reverse. They're a team that I feel like should be there regularly, but they
uh-huh.
haven't.
Yeah,
And it's been some time since we've talked about Uganda on the African stage, and I'm excited to see what they do.
yeah, me too. I'm looking forward to it. Okay, so who are you taking out of this group then?
I'm going to
Nigeria and
take
Tunisia?
Tunisia and Nigeria, and then
Okay.
Tanzania in third. And I think Tanzania is actually going to get out of the group.
Oh, so you are taking three.
I am
Okay.
taking three.
Okay. All right, cool. Yeah, I'm just gonna stick with Nigeria and Uganda.
Fair.
All right. Group D, Senegal, DR Congo, Benin, and Botswana. Now, for me, this was the most straightforward group out of all of them. I think this is a two-team group. I think Senegal and DR Congo come out of this with ease. We, I think Benin and Botswana just fade off into the sunset.
I understand. I think Senegal's going to dominate this group, actually. Um, I think they're definitely going to get 7 points, if not 9 points. And Congo DR is the only team I think that might be able to get a point from them in this group. Um, Senegal's just so good. They have so much talent, and I think they're a favorite, if not the favorite, to win this. I think if Morocco was not hosting and it was in a country that was neutral to both of them, I think I'd probably like Senegal a little bit more. Um, but yeah, I expect Senegal to dominate this group. Um, I think it's a little bit closer after that. I do like Congo DR. Um, Botswana is a team for me that just I don't
I
know.
can't believe they're there.
I know, and I think they're going to hold their own. I think they're going to be a little bit tough, and I like them more than Benin actually. And
Wow.
I don't
Okay.
know if they'll challenge Congo DR, um, but yeah, I think they're going to be tougher than people think. I do think this group will only get two. So the two groups that I have as getting two teams out are actually Group A. I think Mali, Zambia, and Comoros are going to beat up on each other, and I think it's going to be a detriment to them. And in this group, I just don't know that either Benin or Botswana get enough points to qualify as one of those top four. So I'm going to go with Senegal and Congo DR here.
Okay.
But I like Botswana. I'm really looking forward to seeing them at AFCON.
Yeah, it's gonna be fun. And to talk about Benin, I guess a little bit, I do think that there is a lot of potential there. I think they could surprise. Um, but they got a really tough draw in my opinion.
Yes.
Uh,
Yeah.
if again, they're a team, I guess, similar to Comoros. Like if they were in a different group, maybe um, we might be giving them a better chance. But I just think the odds are against them. So, um, all right, Group D, straightforward. Group E, Algeria, Burkina Faso, Equatorial Guinea, and Sudan. This is this is an intriguing group. I think we're going to see three teams coming out of this group. Um, I think there's a bunch of different scenarios here. Like if Algeria lays an egg like they did last year, uh, we could be in for another surprise again here. But personally, I think it's going to be a little more straightforward. I think it's going to be
Yeah.
Algeria. I think it's going to be Burkina Faso. And I went with Sudan because
Ooh.
I know that you will probably pick Equatorial Guinea because of
He's gonna be back. He's going to be
un
back.
your undying love for them.
He's
Uh,
going to be back.
but I actually think that Sudan could surprise here. There are rumors that came out this week that Hani Mukhtar, the Nashville
Ooh.
player, is going to
Yeah.
switch allegiance and play for them.
He
There was a
was with Germany, right?
he was, yeah. There was a report that came out from beIN Sports earlier this week. The player, in a subsequent interview, he denied it, of course. But the beIN Sports reporter's information, he claimed that it came directly from the federation, from Sudan.
Wow.
So, and that the president was going to make an announcement in the coming weeks, I guess. So we'll see if that is actually the case. I think that's a huge boost for them.
Yeah.
Um, and for me, Equatorial Guinea has slowly been kind of fading a little bit, and the fact that they don't have Emilio and Sue is
He's gonna be back. He's gonna be
I know
back, isn't he?
oh,
His
nobody
suspension will be
knows.
over.
Yes, but he said he didn't want to. He had a fight with the federation during AFCON,
He
so
did. It was ugly.
yeah. So we'll have to see. But obviously, you're hoping that Equatorial Guinea does go through.
I yeah, I like the top three: Algeria, Burkina Faso, Equatorial Guinea. I'm really not big on Sudan actually. They're a team that I think probably has the lowest chance of any team in the whole field, honestly,
Yeah,
to get out of the group.
yeah,
They could get some boost with Mukhtar and um, I don't know. Sudan for me is a team that like they had such a big lead and almost choked it away at the end and
correct.
kind of limped their way across the finish line to get in. They've looked good in World Cup qualifying though. I mean, they started hot. They're topping a group with Senegal right now. Like that's that is something that's happening. Um, but I don't know. I think they had a good few months. I don't know that I'm necessarily buying that as like they're actually going to challenge any of the teams ahead of them
Okay,
on a
that's
on an
fair.
international, well, not an international, on a uh African final stage.
Yeah. No, I think your concern is valid, and yeah, that's definitely something that I took into consideration. They had a total mental collapse away to Niger, uh, and ended up losing. It was like 4-0, I think, or 4-1 maybe, which is shocking. But hopefully they've learned it. They've used it as a learning opportunity, and
Yeah.
again, it's a long ways away. A lot could happen. As you mentioned, they are in a position right now in a World Cup qualifying group that is very surprising, and we'll have to see if it actually lasts. But yeah, I feel like they could surprise a little bit.
Yeah.
So that's why I went with them.
Okay. Well, what do you think of Burkina Faso? Because we both like them, but I
Yes.
don't know how much we both like them.
So it's interesting. I for anybody who's interested in reading it, I recently wrote an article. It's up on our website. And Burkina Faso is one of the teams that I'm interested in seeing how their 2025 unfolds because they're not in a great position in their World Cup qualifying group. Um, they have a lot of work to do, but they are a very talented side, right? We just saw Dango Ouattara score a hat trick in the Premier League last weekend. Incredible performance. If they can get him going, I think they have a really good shot. Per usual, for me, they're kind of coming in as like a dark horse, and I hate to
Hmm.
give them that label, but it's just the label that they have.
Yeah.
You know,
It's
I
it, it
it,
always
it
feels like them and Mali are
yeah,
like the teams that on and I mean Equatorial Guinea used to be maybe to an extent that just look really good on paper, but just haven't had any notable success.
correct, correct, and that's the thing that always drives me nuts is
Yeah.
like, which Burkina Faso is going to show up,
Yeah.
which Mali's going to show up, you know?
Maybe throw Congo DR in there also. I think Congo DR has
Yeah.
had a little bit more success though.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, it's like that. Those couple teams, it's just Burkina Faso always is like they're a good team. It just feels like they never achieve anything beyond what they are.
Yeah.
It's like, all right, they're a quarterfinal team. They'll get to the quarterfinals and lose in the quarterfinal.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. And again, I'm going to keep mentioning this, but it's almost a year away and a lot can happen. There's going to be new players that come into all of these squads
Yeah.
and over the course of that time. There's two for Burkina Faso in particular that I have my eyes on. They both play in the second division in France, but I think that they're better than that, and I think that they'll end up getting moves into better leagues. Syriac Irie is one of them. He's currently playing at Troy, and he he has been like a lightning bolt. He burst onto the scene last year. He was with, I think he was with Dijon, maybe, and then he got a move after being 1 year professional up a division with Troy, and he's been he's been pretty good for them. I happen to watch a lot of League Two in France, and
Lucky guy.
he is a real joy to watch. So I've enjoyed watching him. And then the other one is also in League Two with Annecy, uh, Josue Tiendre Biogo. His name is really hard to say.
Rolls right off the tongue.
Yeah, but he actually just moved to France as well. He's a recent addition, but he was the Premier League in Burkina Faso. That's there.
Yeah.
It's called the Premier League there too. In the domestic league, he was the league's like top player like two years ago, I think. Anyways, he's he's got a lot of promise, and every time he comes on and plays for them, he's like scoring or assisting or like making some magic happen. So I'm wondering if he'll be more integrated. He got his first call up for them late last year. So he has been introduced to the squad. Irie has not yet, but I think it's coming. So, anyways, not to go off on too much of a tangent, but in terms of Burkina Faso, like, it's the same story. Like, there's all these
Yeah.
players that have such potential, and realizing it just seems to be a struggle.
Yeah.
So,
I I would like to see them get past the quarterfinals and make a run.
yeah.
Like I feel like I would be pretty surprised if they didn't get out of the group, but I would also be surprised if they did too much damage in the knockout stage. So, as it stands though, I mean, like they at second place in Group E faces first in Group F. They could be staring at the Ivory Coast in the round of 16. So it's it's not going to be tough. They might need Algeria to slip up, and I don't see that happening this time around.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, speaking of Ivory Coast, let's move to Group F. Final group: Cote d'Ivoire, Ivory Coast, Cameroon, Gabon, and Mozambique make up this group. So
Tough group.
you start us off. Tell us your thoughts.
Yeah, I think this is probably the toughest group of all of them. Um, I really think that top to bottom, these teams are playing well. Um, Ivory Coast is great. I think they're certainly a contender to win the whole thing. Defending champions. It's going to be a little bit
Mm-hmm.
different, not at home, but they're a great team. Cameroon also, they're good. I think they're much better when they're at home, but they're a very good team that they're going to play well. Gabon's had a lot of success recently. Just looking at where these teams are at, like I'm projecting Ivory Coast to go to the World Cup. I'm projecting Cameroon to go to the World Cup. Gabon is right there to either qualify as group winner. Um, that's a possibility. They're in the same group as the Ivory Coast, of course. Like it's going to be one of them that's going to the World Cup. The other one's probably going to the World Cup playoffs. And Mozambique, same thing. They're tied with Algeria in their group in World Cup qualifying, and they could very well go to the World Cup playoffs. And between teams qualifying and teams going to the playoffs, it's only 13 teams in Africa, and these four teams might all be in that 13 team list. And so for me, this is a very, very tough group. I think Mozambique got a tough draw. Like that was a team that I was really excited about and looking forward to. And I think they still can get out of the group. I'm just concerned that just the other teams are too strong here.
Mm. So who are you taking?
Um, I do think this is a group that gets three teams out. I'm going with for groups that only get two teams. I'm going with Group A. I think those teams are going to beat up on each other a little bit, and then Group D. I don't think Benin or Botswana. So I do think this group is going to get three teams.
Mm-hmm.
But it's tough. I feel like we could see some surprise. Like, could Gabon knock off Cameroon? Could Mozambique knock off Ivory Coast? Like, I think we could see something like that in this group. And I think I would not be surprised if one of Cameroon or Ivory Coast gets knocked out. And I feel like Cameroon might be the team for me that's a little bit at risk. I'll go out on a limb and go with Ivory Coast, Gabon, and Mozambique. And Cameroon finishes a somewhat shock last.
My friend, you're not going out on a limb. I'm right there with you. I'm right there with you. Written down, I have to go with what I wrote down. So I did go with Cameroon. I went with Ivory Coast, Cameroon, and Mozambique.
Yes.
But I also have written, don't rule out Gabon.
Yeah.
And I agree with you. I think they could pull a fast one on Cameroon. So Cameroon has to be really wary in this group because I just have this feeling, probably similar to what you're feeling. It's like there is potential here for like crazy madness. So I'm looking forward to this group. I think it's gonna be a lot of fun. All of these teams have a lot of quality. That makes it all the better.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think we could see a surprise here.
Of all the groups, so I'm trying to figure out as you were talking, trying to figure out how to phrase this appropriately, but I've got Mozambique with the lowest chance to advance out of this group. But it's a 40% chance to advance. And they're fourth. There's no other group that has a number that high. So that tells you that Mozambique, even projected as fourth place, that tells you how strong they are and that,
Yeah,
they're almost at 50-50 and they've got the fourth best chance. So
crazy.
this group is wide open. I think you just have I think four teams that are playing really well and as you mentioned, roster changes and so forth, and we'll see how the year goes in 25. But if they're playing this right now, I mean, this is a group that I would want to see every single game.
Yeah. Yes. Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. That
Aubameyang? Yes? No?
so he just moved to Qatar. That was announced today. Oh no, sorry. Nope, that was Ziyech. Sorry, Ziyech moved to Qatar
Ah,
today. Aubameyang, I don't know. My guess would be yes.
yes. I thought he was done like 4 years ago, but
Yeah, apparently, but I don't think so.
yeah,
Yeah,
I would guess yes as well. I mean,
yeah,
I think this is the most, this in Group A, I think for me, and I guess Group B I like really as well. So I don't know. I can't wait for AFCON. AFCON's always a great tournament. I think like it's for a 24 team tournament compared to Euro. Um, I think this is the most competitive. I think in Euro you've got top teams. In the Asian Cup you've got teams that are, like these teams are really going to dominate. You have a handful here, but even at the bottom end, there are very very few teams in this field that you're like they're really going to struggle to get out of the group.
yeah, yeah. Parity.
Yeah,
Yeah,
makes for a good tournament.
yes, it does. Makes for a good continent. World Cup qualifying
I'm happy
is,
that we're going to see more CAF teams at the World Cup.
yeah, I think that's a positive for sure. For sure. Okay, well, thanks everybody for listening to our way too early AFCON prediction preview. We hope you enjoyed it. As we mentioned earlier, we will be back ahead of the March window for a probably very massive preview. We're looking forward to that. We have some plans that we're trying to put into place. I won't go too deep into those, just that they will involve YouTube and potentially being live. So
We want to
look,
bring more content. We want to bring you more content
that's right.
and
So
the
look,
international game.
that's right. So look for that. We are trying really hard to get some player interviews. It is the most difficult thing ever on the face of the planet. So if we have any players who happen to listen to the show and they want to come on, please, by all means,
Shoot us a
we would.
DM.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, you can, as Brandon already mentioned, you can follow him at we_global on X. You can follow our pod account at window intl pod on both X and Instagram. And yeah, you can also find our shows on YouTube, and we appreciate your shares, your likes, your ratings everywhere. Please do that. That'd be great. And yeah, I guess this is so long for now.